Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's EHS Daily Advisor webcast, How to Manage Your Company's Safety Incident Lifecycle and the Critical Steps You Should Take, sponsored by Enpro. My name is Michelle, and I'll be serving as your host for today's event. Before we get to the program, we just want to cover a few housekeeping items to get you familiar with the On24 platform. At the bottom of your audience console, you will find the dashboard where there are multiple application widgets for you to use. If you have any technical difficulty during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your technical issue, and our team will gladly assist you. There's also a, There's also a help widget at the bottom of your screen. If you have any other questions during the webcast, there will be a live Q&A at the end, and you can submit your questions also using the Q&A widget. But please be aware that if a fuller answer is needed, or if we run out of time, your question will be answered later via email. If you do wish to obtain a copy of today's slide deck, click on the Resource List widget. It looks like a green folder at the bottom of your screen. An on-demand version of today's event will be available approximately 1 day after the webcast and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. And now, please join me in welcoming your guest speaker for today, Jonathan Neubauer. Mr. Jonathan Neubauer, CSP, is a Director of Safety Organization for Enpro Learning System. Jonathan first began working in the safety field in 2005 when he began to offer fall protection and rescue training and consulting services to several wind energy development companies across the globe. In 2008, Jonathan joined Enpro Industries' Garlock Sealing Technologies division as an environmental health and safety coordinator. He has held a variety of positions within Garlock over the last several years and has also been involved in the Enpro audit program and has led the Enpro case management and workers' compensation training programs. In 2015, John was promoted to Director of Safety Organizational Change for Enpro Learning Systems. Mr. Neubauer will also be presenting at the Safety Culture 2016 conference coming up this September 15th through 16th in Austin, Texas. His session will cover behavioral-based safety and employee training secrets for long-term success. Attendees of this webinar will receive an exclusive $100 discount for the conference using code Culture10 or Culture100. This information will be sent to you via email over the next few days and is also up on your screen now and located in the PDF of the slide deck. With that being said, thank you all for joining us today. John, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you to everybody for joining the webinar today. We're going to try to discuss some of the extremely important and time-sensitive actions that should take place whenever an incident or accident occurs within the workplace. Of course, an hour is not nearly enough time to dive deep enough into each of these aspects of incident management, but I hope to provide a high-level overview of how incidents are managed within our business and some tools and tips that have been beneficial to me throughout my experience in these practices. Over the next 45-50 minutes, we are going to touch base on how to effectively manage the life cycle of an incident and ensure appropriate care for any injured individuals. As an effective means to reduce and eliminate injuries, we will also talk about the importance of collecting data and thoroughly investigating all incidents, not simply those that resulted in serious injury. In order to ensure that incidents have been eliminated from recurrence, an effective system for assigning and tracking corrective actions all the way through to completion needs to be in place. I often see situations where an incident occurred and all these great ideas are brought up, but they never get put into practice or implemented. And that has the potential to have a disastrous effect on the organizational culture. Lastly, I hope to share some things that have helped me in my career, as well as show a few tools that could assist you in your organizations and your care management program. Before we begin the discussion on the incident management process, I thought it would be worthwhile to provide you with a brief background on our businesses and my experience. I don't want to spend a great deal of time on this background so that we can get through the material that we have planned. However, I do feel it's important to communicate that the thoughts and practices that I'm going to share today were developed, implemented, and proven effective in a wide range of businesses, whether they be union, non-union, in the U.S., outside of the U.S., large workforces, small workforces. Not only are our internal businesses made up in all these different ways, but so are our customers outside of Enpro Industries. I will provide a brief overview, but I encourage you to check out our website, either www.enprolearning.com or enproindustries.com for more information on Enpro Industries or Enpro Learning System. Enpro Industries is a diversified manufacturer. We are a leader in sealing technologies, metal polymer and filament wound bearings, components and service for reciprocating compressors, diesel and dual fuel engines, and other solutions that meet the needs of industries worldwide. Our businesses consist of highly hazardous operations, and our colleagues often work in potentially unsafe environments. Despite the high hazards of our businesses, Enpro has been twice recognized as one of America's safest companies by EHS Today, and we pride ourselves on the fact that most all of our businesses across the globe operate injury-free year after year. This has led to the formation of a safety services division, Enpro Learning System. We help customers improve their safety performance through a variety of services and offerings. Our system and approach focus on establishing a strong safety culture at the facility through the development of the leadership team and safety leaders throughout the business, the implementation of organizational values that drive habits of excellence throughout the entire organization. I began my career with Enpro in 2008 and after various EHS roles in consulting. As a site EHS coordinator, I then moved into a divisional role, which was transitioned into a regional role in Northeast U.S. and Canada. And now my current role is assisting businesses outside of the Enpro family of companies as the Director of Safety and Organizational Change in Enpro Learning System. I see every incident or injury as a failure in our overall system, and how we respond to that failure speaks volumes. We have the opportunity to weaken or strengthen the organizational culture in these situations, and with the proactive efforts on these elements that you see on the screen, along with the strong training programs and accountability, we can provide immediate care and support to our colleagues, working with medical staff on a safe return to work, while at the same time immediately investigating the incident and communicating out to all the root causes and sustainable corrective actions that are going to eliminate this potential from affecting the business again. We're not necessarily going to spend a great deal of time on all of these individual elements, but I feel that a comprehensive approach needs to be taken when dealing with the resolution of an incident in the workplace and the care of any affected individuals. Oftentimes, the efforts around resolving incidents and arranging for care are reactionary, and I feel that proactive work in this area is extremely important. Whether it's reaching out to medical facilities to introduce yourself and your business and how you operate, or implementing and practicing responses to an emergency, or making sure that we as an organization are there for an injured colleague, all of these things need to be thought through and systems created so that every individual is cared for and every incident is handled the same way, focusing on ensuring that this failure never takes place again. So let's start with the response to an injury. Every workplace is a little bit different, but generally speaking, every facility should have a response plan focused on their individual risks. For example, in our business where we are milling and calendering rubber or working in a foundry, we do not simply rely on outside emergency response services. In order to provide the appropriate level of first aid, we utilize highly trained teams to respond to any medical incident in the workplace. The terminology of appropriate level of care is important here. In a business where there are substantial risks of catastrophic injury or fatality, a team of individuals trained above and beyond basic first aid is likely a good idea. In my experience, the local ambulance companies will provide customized training focused specifically on your challenges, and we'll touch base on that a little bit later. But the importance of having folks that are trained to handle any situation that could take place in your work environment while waiting for the support of emergency services is extremely important. One critical step that I feel is often overlooked is shutting down an operation until investigation is complete. This tends to take place when there has been a severe enough incident and legal concerns are raised, but I feel that sends a negative message to the workforce. We only stop the operations when we need to collect data to protect ourselves legally. If we practice a true shutdown investigation on all first aids, all near misses, and any other high-risk opportunities before an injury really occurs, we would help to communicate a more positive message. This is so important to our business that we're going to stop everything we're doing to take care of the situation and make it right before we proceed any further. There's a great video on YouTube, Start with a Why, by Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek is speaking in this video. It's a TED Talks video on YouTube. In this video, Simon does not discuss occupational safety at all, but the message he is communicating really resonates with me in how I approach a safety system. If we start with the why and root ourselves in the why of what we are doing, I think we can create a culture of caring that not only helps people in situations like these, but fundamentally changes the way in which we do business, to place the health and well-being of our workforce above all else. So if I were to be asked why we are going to do any of this, my response would be that I fundamentally care for people. I want to ensure that anyone injured or ill receives the best possible care, and I care enough about each member of our team that I want to make sure that we truly understand what transpired so as to make sure that we create a workplace in which we cannot have that same incident take place again. If we have an opportunity through a minor first aid or even better a near miss or a recognized opportunity to protect our colleagues and we do not capitalize on it, then we cannot stand up and say that we're going to be involved once an injury occurs because we care. In order for this to work, though, all incidents and injuries need to be reported, and they need to be reported immediately. And that is one of the first struggles in many industries. Getting employees to understand the importance and why Band-Aids and other minor incidents or near misses need to be reported is going to take some communication and training. In our business, the idea of tracking Band-Aids was a crazy idea at one point in time. We bend, twist, grind metal, and cuts, minor lacerations were a commonality in our business. A great deal of communication needed to take place to initiate this change. And I found that more often than not, I needed to help shift perspective for people a little bit. Shift the perspective from Band-Aids are a part of life to, you know what, I really don't feel as though I should be cut every single day when I come to work. And something here needs to change before this turns into something more severe. I have interesting conversations like this with employees all the time in my role. Going from within our sites as well as other customer sites, I remember interviewing a woman and asking if there were any safety concerns in her work area and if there were any injury potentials. And the immediate answer was no, everything's great here. But as I was talking with this woman for a little while longer, I quickly noticed that she had scarring on both of her forearms. And so I just simply asked a question as to what was causing that. And as a routine part of her day, this woman had to reach over a torch to retrieve a product. And from time to time, the torch would burn her forearms. And she made a comment like, oh, it'd be so simple if we could just turn that torch upside down, I wouldn't have these injuries occurring anymore. Yet the thought of reporting these minor burns as an injury had never crossed this individual's mind. So that's what I mean by shifting perspective a little bit. Sometimes people have become complacent in what they're willing to deal with as part of their employment. But if we truly want to get an idea of all the little incidents that are going on within our business to help to predict the more significant injuries that are likely to occur, we need to get them reported, and we need to help shift that perspective to get everybody to bring those ideas and those situations forward. There are definitely advantages to both the employee and the employer when a system for immediate reporting is in place. Workers' compensation rights are protected, and immediate care, investigation, and correction can take place. Medical escorting of injured employees. This is a widely discussed topic with many of my customers and often comes up at our safety summits and other events that I participate in throughout the year. There's a lot of different thoughts on this, and I encourage you to get as many different opinions and ideas as you can, but I'm going to share with you the way that we've implemented our program and some of the characteristics of our care management and medical escorting program. So before I go too much further, I want to go back to the why again. Why are we going to escort individuals to go seek medical attention if an injury happened within the workplace? I feel that we are there as escorts to help our colleagues. Anything above and beyond that can be great, but my sole goal going into these situations is to be there as an advocate for my colleague or my employee, my coworker. In our business, we always try to transport the employee to the treatment facility. We do not want to ask someone who is injured to be driving themselves to the doctor where things could get worse along the way. I'm sure we've all had horror stories, I've heard of horror stories where individuals have amputated fingers or had sustained other severe injuries and yet were required to drive themselves to the hospital to seek care. That's just not right. Having somebody in a situation like that where they could have further complications and get in an accident along the way simply is just not the right thing to do. In the same line of thinking, though, an injury such as that, it's not appropriate to ask one of our site leaders or EHS personnel or whoever does the medical escorting for your business to put this person in their personal vehicle and end up in a situation where things have gotten worse along the way, or perhaps there could be bodily fluids transferred to personal property, things of that nature. So you really have to think this part of the process out thoroughly before you implement. We tend to have company vehicles at the site, and we suggest using those vehicles when we have a minor injury. Specifically those types of things like carpal tunnels, repetitive stresses, musculoskeletal disorders, things that are not likely to progress negatively while we're in transport. If there's a situation in which we have heavy bleeding or severe injury, compound fractures, or respiratory issues or cardiac-related issues, we're going to call in the emergency response services and make sure that we transport that individual in ambulance so they can get treatment as they need on the way to the hospital, and we'll follow up behind them. Now, when we talk about escorting employees, we generally ask that the employee's direct manager or supervisor be the escort. If that individual is not present, then the next line up in the reporting structure would take over. I feel it's very important that this is simply not just an EHS professional or a safety manager, and that the operations staff or the leadership function of whatever department we're dealing with takes ownership in these situations. It doesn't have to be operations staff. If, say, you have somebody in IT that had an injury, it would be the leadership of the IT department that would step up and escort in these situations as well. Perpetuating the safety professional's job to deal with all injuries takes the ownership and accountability out of the operational leaders of the business, and they should be there when one of their employees is hurt. In non-emergency situations, we can also provide simply first aid on site. If that's appropriate enough to care for the injury, then we'd move on to the next steps in the scenario. But we want to make sure that if we do go off site, that our escort stays with our employee until that employee is either released from the treatment facility or they've been relieved by another coworker or a family member that shows up at the hospital to take over. I'm often challenged on this topic that people are not comfortable escorting. People do not want to go to the hospital with individuals. And while I can understand that asking people to go and interact with doctors and suggest things of treatment plan, that's not really what I am going after when I refer to the term escort. We are simply there as a resource. We are there as a support structure for both the employee as well as the medical staff, getting them information. But I would not ask an escort to be putting themselves in an uncomfortable situation either, trying to manage the care of the employee. This is more about providing care for the employee rather than managing what happens at the treatment facility. Okay, so how can we show support while we're there? We can provide information to doctors on the task that was being performed or the situation, whether that be a job description, maybe you have a video of what happened. We can help communicate and remove roadblocks between the doctors and workers' compensation. In my role, managing workers' compensation for a division as well as overseeing the health and safety programs of a facility, I often found myself in the struggle where we knew the appropriate treatment plan for the individual to get them the best chances of recovery, getting them back to work in the earliest amount of time, and yet the recommended medical guidelines for workers' compensation would tend to slow that process down, or maybe would throw some sort of wrench in the mix where treatment was delayed even further. And I think that taking that opportunity to interact with the doctor's office and the workers' compensation insurer however you can really provides a service to your employee. In our case, we're essentially self-insured, so we can have a lot of flexibility over what procedures are done, and instead of waiting 4 weeks for an MRI to be done, if I know it's the right thing to do, then I just step in and make sure that gets approved, so that way we can get the employee the treatment they need and get them back on the course of healing as quickly as possible. We can help answer any questions that the employee has, whether it be on workers' compensation, return to work. We can arrange for family members to find out what's going on and get them to the facility. There's all sorts of things that we can do there as an escort. And I also am a proponent that if we're going to escort in times of a work-related incident, we probably want to consider escorting for those non-work-related incidents that take place at work. Because, again, going back to the why, if it's for the fundamental fact that we're caring for the people that we work with, then why wouldn't we go and be there with that individual, sit there with them while they're going through this scary or troubling time until they have other support with them at the facility. But I get asked that question quite a bit. When do we go? When do we not go? And again, if we focus on the fact that we're not there trying to manage what happens from a treatment perspective, but rather be a support and provide support for that employee, I think it's the right thing to do to go in both those cases. So after the initial treatment, there's always some sort of ongoing follow-up support, right? If the employee is returned to work with or without restrictions, it's a good idea to frequently check in. I like this to be a group effort. For example, the direct supervisor could be checking in to make sure the individual is feeling okay, that the work that they're doing falls in the restrictions if there are any, and that support is given to fixing the underlying cause of the incident that took place to begin with. In our business, I would also ask the operations manager and the director of operations to check in and make sure that they've provided their support to the resolution process, as well as to make sure the individual has been taken care of. I, as an EHS manager, would also check in. I want to ensure that the overall system was implemented effectively, and I want to make sure that the individual has received care and is part of the resolution process as well. If the employee is out of work, we can still provide support through direct and indirect communication. If there's no request from the employee, if there is a request from the employee not to contact them, or they've directed all communication to go through attorneys, then I would obviously abide by that. We don't want to be compounding the problem, making the situation worse, but I think that maintaining open lines of communication is really important to getting people back to work sooner, keeping them connected to the team and the work environment, and ultimately just showing them that we care about them as an individual. So again, if they say that they want all the communication to go through the insurance company or legal source, then please do that. But we can still send information through those avenues. We can still send out information regarding our return to work policies, both to the doctor and copying the employee, copying their attorney. We could send them letters or emails, letting them know what's going on at work, just trying to keep them engaged in what is happening. And I suggest that these calls focus not on the treatment plan, not on the medical status of the employee, but just keeping lines of communication open, letting them know that we're there for them, letting them know what's going on in the work environment. I wouldn't be calling up asking questions like, so how have you been healing, so on and so forth. If they offer that up, that's one thing, but to call and solicit that information is another situation. So we've already discussed a little bit about the investigation process and that it should take place immediately, and this begins with securing the scene and making sure that it's safe for everyone working on the investigation. I also advocate for securing the scene so that evidence is not disturbed and value information is not lost. It's really easy for things to be moved very quickly, and you're left trying to figure out a situation without all the necessary pieces to the puzzle. This shutting down of the operation also sends a message to the workforce, right? It also demonstrates how serious of an issue this is and the commitment to fixing an issue when we've had a failure. I'm sure that many of you utilize a standard form or system for incident reporting, but I've always liked to make sure that the procedure that I've used, whatever one it is, includes avenues for securing interviews, getting witness statements, obtaining important pieces of information like time of day, department, work shift, overtime or not, all these different aspects. But I also want a system that allows me to capture photos, perform video reenactments. I'm not sure if that's something that a lot of you on the webinar do, but I'm a strong advocate for video reenactments. If you can get the employee that was involved to participate, that's great. But reenacting the injury situation does a couple of things. It helps to possibly highlight some things that could easily be overlooked, specific actions or body positioning or movements that the individual took. But it's also a great opportunity to utilize that video in future training events and things of that nature. So we try to get video reenactments whenever possible. And then, of course, we want to make sure that after things have been investigated, after we've got root causes identified and corrective actions in place, then we should do a review and make sure that we have all the appropriate authorizations in place before starting the operation back up. And again, when I talk about this investigation procedure, this is not only when an injury happens. I believe it should take place when we have first aids and near misses throughout the facility. Again, going back to the messages that we're sending through our actions, it continues to drive home that every little incident is so important that we want to utilize it as a learning opportunity and a means to improve. So immediate incident reporting can really be a hotly debated topic. What is immediate? If we were to talk, perhaps to an OSHA inspection officer or a workers' compensation adjuster or even maybe a workers' comp judge, I think you get all sorts of different opinions. But when I am referring to immediate incident reporting here, I'm not necessarily referring to when the employee notifies us as an employer that something has transpired. Now, we spend a great deal of time educating and training our workforce that we want an incident reported as soon as any discomfort is noticed, as soon as any event takes place in which there is pain or discomfort or a pop or any of these things, right? We really have to go into detail explaining what we want reported. But there are times where something might take place and the seriousness is not noted for a period of time, or perhaps it doesn't, the employee doesn't realize it's an issue until it's continued to aggravate for a couple of days. And so this 24-hour notification that I'm speaking to here really starts at that point in time, 24 hours from the moment that we as an employer were notified that we had an injury on our hands. And within this 24-hour time period, there's a couple of things that we want to make sure take place within our business. First of all, a robust incident investigation, complete with corrective actions, with timelines, deadlines, and a video reenactment and a hot seat call that we'll talk about here in a little while later should be completed within 24-hour period of time. Any OSHA recordable injury is reported immediately up to a division president. Within 24 hours, any lost time goes up to our CEO, as well as all the division presidents. And at the sites themselves, within 24 hours, any near-miss, first aid, or significant safety opportunity should be reported up to the highest level manager at the facility within 24 hours. And you can see some other folks on this slide who also receive these communications, and we'll go into a little bit, for instance, the reasons why the regional EHS managers are on there, so they can take this information and distribute it out to their contacts at all of our sites across the globe to make sure we're communicating this out to every single one of our 6,500 or so employees across the globe. So on the corrective action side of things, I see two main types of corrective actions. First, there's an immediate response to the situation. We shut down the equipment, we perhaps identify a long-term solution, but a short-term alternative that ensures safe operations might have come to the forefront. These are typically implemented immediately and do not always sustain for long periods of time. We need to get the operation back up and running, but only if it's safe to do so, and sometimes these immediate actions will allow you to do that while we're continuing to develop or investigate a more sustainable long-term corrective action. And those more sustainable long-term corrective actions are listed on the slide as the comprehensive corrective actions. And these are the ones that are really addressing the root cause and might require some more effort or capital or other resources. And these actions are addressing, again, the cause of the incident with the intention of eliminating the risk permanently from our business. The last two practices I'm going to touch on are really processes that we utilize to help ensure that we have done what we intended to do. Hot seat calls help ensure that we have truly identified root causes and sustainable corrective actions, and stand downs help communicate the situation and remedy to all employees. There could also be review in the hot seat call of the care management of the employee if that were to be something that needed to be discussed, but not the actual treatment, but how our care management process in terms of escorting and caring for that individual, how that took place throughout the course of this incident could also be reviewed in that hot seat call. But hot seat calls, I know the name can get a little confusing. We've had a lot of dialogue on the name itself, but I'll tell you a little bit about what they are within our business and how we utilize them. Hot seat calls, again, are typically held in 24 hours. Although there are some exceptions. We are going to be pulling in resources from our operations around the globe, and we want to do that when we really understand what happened and how we're going to fix it. So if you need a little bit more time because we haven't been able to speak to an employee or we haven't been able to get access to an environment to do the investigation yet, obviously that time frame for the hot seat call would shift a little bit. But this process consists of the leadership and investigatory team reaching out and soliciting help from one of our other facilities. The site that had the incident describes what happened and the root causes that were identified. And then those folks that were invited to the call, red team review might be another way to think of this team, but this team is of folks outside of the facility is really there on the call to challenge the actions of those at the facility where the injury took place. So after they hear what the root cause analysis was, they're going to challenge that. Did you look at this? Did you think of that? We have a similar operation. This is what we've noticed or experienced, and this is how we've dealt with a similar issue. But the purpose of that call and those resources on that phone call are to really challenge the site and make sure that we haven't just settled on the easy answer, that unsafe behavior. Employee made an unsafe decision. That's not a root cause analysis of an incident, and there's a reason why that person made that decision or took that unsafe act. And that review team is there to help make sure that we're challenging ourselves to get down to that true root cause. Once there's consensus on the root cause of the incident, we're going to move into the corrective action portion. The team at the site where the injury took place, they're going to present what are their immediate and long-term corrective actions. And again, there's going to be some challenge to that. Do these corrective actions really eliminate the potential, and are they really sustainable? Employee retraining is not... as a standalone corrective action is not sustainable enough, and it certainly is not going to eliminate the potential from that injury reoccurring again, so it would not hold up as a lone corrective action following a hot seat call. We really want to make sure that the corrective actions that we're putting in place, that they really are going to eliminate this potential from happening again within our business. And there's one other really important aspect of the hot seat call. And whenever there's been a failure within our system, we've had an injury, we need to take a step back and realize what role we may have played in that incident taking place. And so we typically go through this process of accountability. And if there was something that I could have done or something I should have done or something I didn't do that helped contribute to that injury, we want to get that on the table. And we want to discuss that to make sure that we prevent those issues from recurring and creating an unsafe situation again. It's truly eye-opening when this reflection is facilitated in all the different ways that we could have stepped in to prevent many incidents from occurring within our workplace. After we've gone through the investigation, after we've gone through the hot seat call process and the reporting, we would then move on to a safety stand-down. And I'm sure many of you guys have had experience with safety stand-downs throughout your career. You've utilized a similar practice. But a safety stand-down to me is simply taking time to stop work and to communicate out what happened within our business and to take that opportunity to send our folks out to look for similar opportunities so that we can fix them before they lead to something else. If an incident occurred in a specific department, that stand-down would occur as soon as possible. We'd want to pull everybody together, lay out what we know, what we're going to continue to investigate, where we could use any help, and what the plan is for that particular operation for the foreseeable future. That would be an immediate stop of work and a communication out to those most closely to the affected area. If it were a really significant incident within our workplace, we'd probably consider even shutting down the business to make sure that everybody understands what is happening. I'm not sure how your workplaces operate, but within our business, a rumor mill can get started very, very easily, and if we don't take that step to stop work and to communicate out what's happening, there's all sorts of perceptions and opinions as to what may have happened or what may have transpired, and they may all be absolutely incorrect and really do some harm overall. So if it's something significant like that, we would probably want to stop work and pull everybody together just to lay out what we know at that point in time and what we're going to do to ensure that nobody else is going to get hurt while we're continuing on through the process. Now, if this is something that happened at another facility and I'm getting word of it through our communication program, then most likely we're going to communicate that out at shift startup. It's not an actual stoppage of work, I understand that, but it is taking time out to focus on a safety issue, and we can take time to focus on whether or not we have similar hazards in our workplace. The way in which we communicate the message makes all the difference. If I started up my shift in the morning and I simply stood up and began by saying, you know what, this injury happened, so-and-so cut themselves using a knife, but we've got 10,000 widgets to get out today, be safe, I did not actually get any engagement out of the workforce. I have not really communicated anything lasting to the employees, and I certainly haven't given them the opportunity to go out and find a similar situation that we could eliminate right now to prevent that from happening within my team. So working with those who are going to deliver this message is really important, making sure that we're going to do it the right way, that we're really communicating out the details of what happened, really focusing on the root causes, on the corrective actions, and then asking our folks, making time, whether that's 15 or 20 minutes, go out in your work area and look for a similar type of hazard. And if you find it, if you can fix it, but let me know about it so we can track it. If you find something you can't fix it, well, then bring that back, and we're going to get that on a list, and we're going to make sure that we start getting something in place to take care of that particular issue. So from time to time, in my EHS type of role, it's nice to kind of sit in and audit those stand-downs, if you will, make sure that they're going on effectively. So I told you I wanted to kind of share some tips and tricks with you and some systems that I've utilized throughout my career, and we're going to focus quickly on an incident reporting system and some of the value that that brings to the organization. And so when I look at our business, we have operations across the globe, all different languages, all different shapes and sizes, different types of hazards, and we needed a system that was able to connect our entire company globally, that was going to help in the incident investigation, automatically communicate out the incident reports to the appropriate level of personnel, and track and provide a high level of follow-up on any corrective actions that are assigned coming out of these incident investigations. We wanted a low-cost option, and compared to what was currently available at the time. And we wanted the ability to collect any necessary data, provide metrics and graphs, and our monthly reports, all that stuff, as well as storing the photos and videos and things that come out of our incident investigations. If this slide were blown up, you'd also see you have the ability to have ISO, document control, other policies and procedures under the reports menu over here, all sorts of different charts and menus you can pull off of this system. But there's a couple of really key features that I want to focus on for whichever system you decide to use moving forward. But before I get to that, I thought we'd do a quick poll. We'll leave this open for 30 or 45 seconds. I'm just kind of wondering, how do safety incidents and hazards currently get reported and managed? Through incident tracking software, Excel, manual paper copy, or some other system? Just be kind of nice to know where everybody's at. Just leave that up for a few more seconds and then jump in to see what the results show us here in a minute. Okay, flip on over and see. So we've got a fairly, I wouldn't say even distribution, but a good variety here. We've got some folks that are using instant tracking software, just under a third, and then some folks that like to do things a bit more manually, whether that's Excel or other manual. And then the other, I'm sure a couple of things could fall into this category, but that's useful. Almost half the folks here are manually entering in all this information. And therefore probably manually extracting all the information if you need to use that from a data analysis perspective. So thank you. That was interesting for me. So I told you there was two key features that we really wanted to focus on through this system. And first and foremost is this consistent and thorough incident investigation and reporting. We wanted to make sure that no matter where our incidents took place, we were going to get the same information. We were going to communicate it out to the same types of people, same level of people within the organization within the same period of time, and we wanted to make sure that we are able to assign our behavior-based safety triggers and all the things that were part of our focus here in this system. And so part of the safety reporting system here that we offer, you have the ability to go in and fill out different types of forms based on the type of incident, near miss, an injury or an illness, a safety opportunity. Each one of those categories fundamentally changes the criteria that are required, but it really allows for a very consistent approach to accident investigations. Very easy to utilize, web-based, and by putting different controls in place, you can ensure that you're getting all the information that you want. For instance, when I have a simple report that somebody manually fills out, or one of those electronic documents that gets emailed around an organization, oftentimes blanks or data entry points can be left blank, and we're missing out on valuable data. Whether that be, are we working on overtime, or at what part in the day did this entry take place? The beginning part of the shift, right after a break, right after lunch, right before they went home for the day. All these little bits of information, I think, are really important to understanding what's going on within the workplace. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a system that was going to capture that each and every single time. The other side of this was the corrective action part of the process. And again, kind of going back to that scenario earlier where we have all these great ideas, but they never get put into practice, from a cultural perspective, it really sends a message. We haven't fixed what we know has already led to an injury within our workplace, but we want you to report everything. We want you to tell us about unsafe conditions. We want you to tell us about unsafe behaviors in the workplace. If we don't fix them, then we're undermining all the efforts when we're asking for people to bring forward these ideas. So for the corrective action portion of the system, you can enter in either a root cause or immediate corrective action. In fact, you can have it set up that it requires an immediate corrective action before the report can be submitted. And one of the really neat features of the site that were implemented was that you're actually able to assign the task to anyone with an email address. If they're a registered user, they can go in and get some details about the incident. They can't see specific medical information and things of that nature, but they can log in and get additional details of the incident. And after it's been assigned with the due date, the system really helps drive completions through an escalation process. So what will happen is that if you've been assigned a corrective action and it hasn't been completed by the due date, you're going to get a reminder, right, when that due date has come, as well as up to a period of time afterwards, up to a week. You can have another reminder notification get sent out. If after that week it still isn't done, now the next level of reminder can go out, not only emailing me as a responsible party, reminding me, but it also can send a copy of that email to my manager. And from that point on, me as a responsible party, I would get emails every single day reminding me as to what's going on, and the frequency for the manager or the next level of escalation can be adjusted. So it's a great way to make sure that it's never just falling off of one person's plate. There's that constant escalation. Now, of course, there's always reasons why things might get delayed, right? And we don't want people just getting into the habit of ignoring these escalating emails. Otherwise, that functionality loses all of its power. So let's say, for example, I had a corrective action that was due today. I've done everything I can. I'm just simply waiting on the item to get shipped. We ran into some logistical problems, and it's going to be done and implemented by next week. I can go in and adjust that corrective action or work with my team at the site to adjust the due date of that corrective action. So that way we're not getting pinged for something that, we have an actual estimated completion date and all these things are. All these things on. But if we really aren't making progress, it's a great way to really drive home the point that you need to get on this, and it has that escalating feature to make sure that we have additional levels of responsibility notified so they can get involved as needed. Some other tips and tricks. A care management book, that's an example of a product we have on our website, but it was developed for our frontline supervisors and managers. And the reason for it is injuries do not happen often within our workplace. And if they don't happen often and you don't escort very often, things about, what are the different forms of first aid under OSHA, or who's our workers' compensation carrier, or even where is the closest medical facility, or what's our return to work program, all these things can slip from people's memory. If it's not something that they're working with every single day, and it may have been a year or two between the last escorting visit they've done, it's very easy to forget these things. So this book is literally about pocket size. I know it doesn't show the size very well on the slide here, but it's meant to be a very small, quick, and easy thing to grab and take with you outdoor on your way to the medical facility. And it goes through a lot of the key details that we'd like our escorts to remember. What are you there for? How do we communicate with doctors? Again, we're not asking for them to go out and argue the difference between a prescription and non-prescription medication or something to that effect, but simply be there as a resource. They're customizable, so you can put in all your key information, but it really is that quick, easy access tool for somebody to grab on their way out the door to escort somebody. So whether that's a small card or a small book or whatever you think would work best for your business, I would encourage you to have something like that in place for those individuals, so that way they always have that resource handy with them when they need it. And I touched base on this a little bit earlier, but the proactive work that you do in a care management prior to an incident taking place is extremely important. Establishing relationships with medical providers and responders early on, whether that be through inviting them to your facility, showing them your operations, informing them of your company's programs, maybe even doing a little bit of a training on OSHA recordability for the doctors so they understand some of the concerns of the employer, having them participate in rescue drills or whatever types of emergency response situations that you might have going on at your site. I think you might be really surprised at the eagerness in which, especially first responders, ambulance crews, firefighters, our operations are typically in small towns, volunteer-based organizations, and inviting them in and allowing them to have some input in the way we manage an incident has been an extremely effective part of our program. They might point something out that we're doing that could put somebody at risk, or maybe they can point out some simple changes to a program that would help get them to our facility a moment or two faster. That can be all the difference. And I think it's really great for the employees, too, to know exactly what their roles are as first responders at the site and what things they should remain cognizant of to make sure that we have done before the more advanced trained personnel come on site and take over. And so it's really great to reach out and build those relationships early on. Building a relationship with the doctors, that can be a little bit more complicated. In my experience, they've been extremely busy, and finding time has been a challenge. But I think that if you stick with it and continue to reach out to them, you will find an opportunity to go and begin these discussions. And in my experience, it's been one of the most beneficial parts of our care management program, having doctors that understand who I am, what my goals are when an employee has been injured in terms of getting them the best care that we can, in terms of allowing them to come back to work on light duty, so on and so forth, showing them our operations. It's really benefited us greatly in the care management side of things. It had nothing to do with the person who was injured. It all was done beforehand. Another part of this, obviously, would be thoroughly training your escorts and the leaders of your business that would potentially have to go along on these situations. And we have several different levels of care management within our business. We have trainings for, every single employee and colleague within the business. We have training for supervisors and managers and escorts. And we have training programs for those who are involved in the workers' compensation and the claims side of the business and going through that part of the process, but making sure that we have a robust training that occurs over and over and over again, making sure we've got a highly trained staff is really important. And I say that training for all of your employees is extremely important because, again, you could take the stance that our medical escort is going to go and be that advocate for OSHA recordability with a doctor. I've had experience in those types of environments and worked with companies that do that sort of thing, and sometimes you can have some success. But if we were to take the time to really train our employees on all those minute details of OSHA record keeping, and if they're really truly engaged in the culture, and provided the injury really doesn't require treatment above and beyond first aid, those employees are likely going to be an advocate for that conservative treatment. And in my experience, a doctor does not care what I have to say if I'm standing in that waiting room trying to argue prescription versus non-prescription or return to work versus out of work. That doctor is concerned with the employee who was injured. That's their patient. And so if that person is saying, you know what, I could use some non-prescription, ibuprofen for a couple days and see if I can make it through, and if it worsens, I'll let you know. Or, how about we try a soft brace versus a rigid brace? There's no reason why we can't have that same level of training with all of our employees and have them engaged in this so they can be an advocate on that more conservative treatment when they're at the medical facility. And then lastly, practice, whether it be role-playing scenarios for your escorts, whether it be practicing the emergency response to the different types of situations and events that you could have in your workplace. If you're not practicing when times are good, you'll most likely miss something in a high-stress emergency scenario. I realize I'm getting a little late on time, so again, this care management process is really only one component of an overall system. On the slide, you see the ENPRO safety system, and this is what we focus on during our safety summits and when we open our facilities to others, like our upcoming event in Columbia, South Carolina on the 5th and 6th. Just one note on those summits, we are the only publicly traded company that I'm aware of that allows complete access to all levels of our organization, from our CEO and division presidents speaking at these events all the way down to learning from our EHS professionals and interacting with our frontline operators during the plant tour and the panel session. We allow you to learn from and ask questions of all levels of our organization during the event. And although I didn't speak much on our behavior-based safety program, we also have our Safety First program as well, and we've been traveling all over the U.S. this year providing training on behavior-based safety and on the Safety First program. So if you have any interest in the upcoming summit or in the behavior-based types of programs, feel free to check out the dates there on the slide or, again, on our website, emprolearning.com. So with that, I think we have some time for some questions.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much. We do have a ton of great questions that have been coming in. So for everyone who's joining us, keep them coming. Thank you. All right, so let's get started. First question. Do you know of any good safety incident corrective action tracking forms or software systems that you could share with us today?
I've used a bunch of them out there. I mean, first and foremost, I'd say ours is a great one. It's a low-cost alternative. I just kind of touched base on that, although I might not have been too clear in specifically what we offer. But that safety reporting system that I showed a couple of screenshots for, we do offer that to folks outside of our business, and it's a low-cost option specifically for incident reporting and corrective action tracking. That's the primary functionality of that system. You're not going to have all the bells and whistles that you can get with some of these other more elaborate, much more expensive systems, but that's an offering. There's a bunch out there. Some are actually free to use and things of that nature. Since I don't have all the names off the top of my head, and I'd hate to plug one outside of another, I can try to respond to that a little bit further in email with some additional resources that are out there for you. But there'll be a slide up here in a few minutes again with our phone number and email. And if you'd like information on our safety reporting system, feel free to shoot us an email at I think it's info@emprolearning.com, or actually I'll push this slide to you really quick just to make sure you've got it. Right there, 731-1459, area code 704, and we can provide some answers on that.
Great, thank you. Next question. What type of safety training or awareness is required for the very top levels of NPRO management?
That's a very interesting question, actually, and this is something that we've worked with quite a bit. And we established this training matrix a couple of years ago. But first and foremost, there's a very robust safety leadership program that we would obviously run all of our management and leadership through. And this is focusing on developing that core value or core ethic of safety within all of our business leaders, and letting them know what the expectations are for them within our business, because I don't think it's the same as what you might encounter in businesses outside of MPRO. So there's certainly a leadership training component, safety leadership component that comes through for all levels of our organization. But we also want our leaders of our business to be able to speak the lingo. So obviously any of our internal programs, we want them going through. There's actually a discussion now on whether or not we want to have all the way up to division presidents and CEOs go through, the OSHA general industry awareness courses, more to make sure that the request was they wanted to have, they wanted to be able to recognize hazards a bit better when they walk through plants. And sometimes they don't know what they don't know when it comes to some of the details of OSHA regulations, right? And so there's been some discussion on that. And there certainly is a lot of training on how to interact with folks, how to coach folks, and how to really get people engaged in the overall process and system of safety. And so I know I didn't go into all the details of all the different types of classes, but definitely want the general awareness. We definitely want the safety leadership training. They would get care management training as well. And then there's other opportunities to help further develop our leadership, whether that be by developing and sharing their Safety My Voice, which is their personal voice for safety, whether that's speaking at a safety summit to customers and to folks outside of MPRO. There's all sorts of other developmental opportunities outside of the formal training and awareness that we want to make sure that we offer up to the leadership of our business. We want to help them become visionary safety leaders, and they have that interest as well. So those developmental opportunities are just as important as the formal training opportunities.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, John. Next question. What is the best approach to safety when management does not give it a priority? Well,
I think, first and foremost, there are some things that are within our control and some things that are not within our control. And I think sometimes that people can throw their hands up saying, my boss, he just doesn't get it, so I can't go any further. And I would challenge that by saying you have the ability and the control to influence up as well as down. And so if your management does not give it priority, then that's where my focus needs to be. I need to shift that perspective. What is it that individual or group of individuals feel and think, and how can I help communicate, and not only just the importance of this, but it fundamentally comes down to a respect issue and caring for people as human beings. And so maybe some of that perspective is just shifting it along those lines. But you have to start there, because any work that we do with the frontline folks, if it's not going to be embraced by the leadership, it's going to die at a certain point in time. And I guess maybe I have a different view of things, but I'm going to work relentlessly with that leadership team to the point of we either start to shift our perspective and start heading down the direction of robust safety culture and performance successes, or they're just going to get so sick of me they fire me, and I'm okay with that. But I'm not going to just sit back and accept the status quo or average performance for what it is. And so I'm going to be just there all the time, making sure to to work with that management team to help them understand, help them develop that ethic within themselves, and show them how to effectively lead safety within a business. And there's also other opportunities you could put in front of them to go out and get experiences outside of your business. An example would be a summit like ours. Other folks do it, but helping leadership benchmark with and learn from companies that are doing it can also help a great deal.
Great answer, John. Thank you. And what specific method or methods do you use in determining the root cause or causes of the incident as a basis for corrective actions?
I would say that that's really left up to a lot of the sites individually, to be honest. Different cultures, different locations, they've got different tools, whether it's Fishbone or 5 Whys or any of these things. And I'm honestly not, I'm not stuck on any one of those methodologies, provided they work for that team and that site. I've seen a wide variety of them getting used. 5 Whys is probably the most common, and it's kind of universal, if you will, in terms of language and really easy to explain. So I would say that that's probably one of the most common ones, but every business I've interacted with kind of has their standard approach to a root cause analysis, and I would say just use whatever's working for you and has been working for your organization.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question. Culture change is a process, and it seems that Enpro has a very mature safety culture. About how long did it take for Enpro to get to its current level?
That's a really tough question to answer, and I'll explain why. Just a brief bit on Enpro's history. We have a very, very long history. Some of the companies that make up Enpro Industries, Garlock Sealing Technology has been around for 128, 130 years. Fairbanks Morse Engine, same type of time frame. There's legacy businesses within our history, Colton and Coltec and all these different companies that have helped in some way, shape, or form to create the culture that we have today, whether it be through negative experiences that we had at the time and lessons learned or whatever that is. But the other reason why it's hard to really give a good answer for that is our business has grown dramatically in the last, I'd say, 6-8 years. We're very acquisition heavy. And when we acquire a business, I think the average medical treatment case rate or OSHA recordable rate is about a 12, right? So 12 out of every 100 employees at the site are having a medical treatment case or injury that requires beyond first aid. That's the average case rate for our acquisitions. And obviously our performance is nowhere near that. So we put them in our metrics immediately, and we start working them on the culture immediately. But so each individual site is at a different stage due to when they've joined the family, how long they've been around, what their culture was like previously. But I think that you can effectively really promote change in a relatively short period of time. Is it going to be the end state? Of course not. But within 18 months, 24 months, you should have been able to implement a workplace where we have strong safety leadership that are actively engaged in improving the safety, not only physically, but also the mentality of safety within the workplace. We can have had safety action teams in place to drive an employee engagement and employee ownership in the process. And we can really start to drive this culture of caring through our actions and our interactions every single day. And so I think you can have a substantial amount of work and change done in that relatively short period of time. But it's a tough question to answer specifically for us. Enpro's only been around since 2002, but I think that we got to a state of good. We were named America's Safest Company, I think, the first time in 2006, 2007, and our rates were much worse than what they are now. And so I think that in the 2010 to 2012 timeframe, when we revamped the system for reporting and tracking incidents, when we revamped our behavior-based safety programs, when we started some other really key portions of our system, I think in that last 6-year time frame, 4 to 6 year time frame, we've seen substantial growth. It's harder to go from good to great than it was from relatively bad to relatively good from whatever that was, 2002 to 2010. So I hope that answers the question. It's a tough one to answer.
Yeah, that's great, John. Thank you. All right, it looks like we're going to go ahead and ask just one more question. We don't want to take up too much of everyone else's time past 3 o'clock. So we do have time for just about one more, and I'll go ahead and ask that one. John, do you know of any groups or organizations that have influence over OSHA's definitions of recordability, especially with the prescription medicine being the only qualifying factor?
I don't know of a whole lot of groups that have influence over that. I mean, there are definitely, advocacy groups and things that are out there, but specifically on OSHA's definitions of recordability, I would be amazed if we see any changes on that, to be honest with you, in terms of, opening that up to include less, to report less injuries. With the new requirements that are coming out, starting next year, with reporting injuries quarterly to the internet and making that all public information and all those sorts of things, I really couldn't foresee, I guess, a group having enough sway over OSHA to get them to change that definition of recordability. More often than not, the typical response or interaction that people have is reaching out through letters and asking for interpretations. But I am not specifically aware of any group or organization that I think I could point you to that would have influence over OSHA's definitions. If I can find one or think of one by the time I send out some answers to these other questions, I'm happy to provide it. But off the top of my head, I don't think I can point you in a good direction. I'm sorry.
Great. Thank you so much, John. And we can, like you said, we can follow up with everyone after the event in regards to answering this question a little bit further. So we do just want to thank everyone for joining us and for sticking it out until the end with us today. John, do you have any final comments?
Just again, I just want to make sure I have the right slide up. Any questions on any of the services offerings, MPRO, to find out about the summit, just to call and bounce some ideas, whatever it is. You've got some contact info on this slide here. I just encourage you to reach on out, and that'll most likely put you in touch with Kyle Murray, and he does sales and marketing and kind of a jack of all trades for us at ELS, and he'll make sure that your request or your question gets forwarded on to one of us that can help you out a bit further if need be.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you very much, John, for being here today. We appreciate that. And we did just want to remind attendees once more that as a thank you for joining today's event, each of you will be receiving an exclusive discount of $100 for the 2016 Safety Culture Conference. You can use the code CULTURE100 at checkout. The link to the registration is at the bottom of the slide, and we'll also be sending you this information via email shortly following this event. Please also take note that at the close of this webcast, you will see an exit survey. In an effort to make each of our webcasts beneficial to you, we would appreciate your input. EHS Daily Advisor and NPRO would like to thank you again for joining us today. This concludes our program.